It's great to meet you, and I want to begin our journey into your work by asking you first and foremost. The pandemic was such a big deal. 5 years ago, we were barreling into it, trying to figure it out. So many unknowns. How did you make it through that time period, and how has it influenced your work and the way that you do things today?
Well, from its standpoint of teaching yoga, it changed everything for the worse.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a senior teacher at Yoga Works. We had there were 50, I think, four studios nationwide, and after about 2 months, they just shut down everything. I mean, from New York to California, they shut them all down,
Yeah.
and they went all online, which was, it worked okay for a while, I guess. I'm not sure what their model is still online, but it scattered people. A lot of the people in a lot of fields that couldn't work went back to where their families lived. Went back to places that they'd come from, and never came back, and never started teaching again. And so it changed things a lot. And now people are coming back into the studio, but it's a sort of a different crowd. It's like um, we're on yoga, right? We're talking about yoga here. I mean, because I've done a lot of different things.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when they came back, it's like the there was a whole the golden age of yoga, in my opinion, in the West started in the mid 70s, and it rolled all the way up through the probably mid 90s. And that's when people that got into it were really interested in the totality of it. The spiritual aspects of it, the you know health aspects of it, as well as the exercise. Now it's predominantly exercise, and to the point where people are doing yoga with weights and yoga lattes and all that, which is, if you're a yogi, not just somebody who does yoga, that's kind of a joke,
Yeah.
because it's it's not bad to do it, just don't call it yoga.
Yeah.
Call it something else. So yeah, and then people are back in the studios now, and things are going well. They're back in the gym, so that part of it's back, but it's definitely changed the energy around the whole thing for sure.
And the weird thing about living through that time period is if there was anything people needed, they needed physical fitness, they needed mental stability, they needed these things that were going to help them through. And to shut all of this down, it was just so anterior. I just hope that if something, God forbid, comes down the line where we have to live through this again, there's smarter people out there that
Amen to
dispense the
that,
right
man.
thing.
Amen to that. Well, then of course there was a lot of politics involved. There was a lot of economy involved. I mean, what a landfall for pharma,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and you're right. It did so much damage on the level of keeping people inside, isolating people, dividing people. It was, I don't know. It was crazy, and people. I like to look at the glass as half full, and I'd like to say there was some positive outcome out of it. If there is one, I would say it's what you just said. Next time it happens, we'll hopefully know how to operate it better, and people won't tolerate being subjugated like that, I guess is the best
Yeah.
way to say it. You know?
Well, the one thing I think that was good about that time period is that podcasting became a big deal. And I had done podcasting since 2011, never really thought about it. And all of a sudden during that time period, I'm like, here's this thing I've been doing all these years. And all of a sudden it's this hip thing. People love it. They're getting into it. And I think what podcasting does is it erases those stark contrasts to black and white. It creates this very wonderful medium of gray shades that
Hmm.
allows us to all say, you know what? We really are all doing the same things. We're going towards the same place.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the problem is when the people, the humans that are leading the charge, are guilty of all that bad stuff.
Yep.
Dividing, ridiculing, uh, you know, dehumanizing, all the stuff. It's sort of it. I worked in the film and television business, and they have a call sheet, right? And on the call sheet, the number one actor is the one that's the biggest draw or star or whatever, and then it goes down there. And the behavior of the rest of the cast is determined a lot by how number one on the call sheet behaves. And it's the same thing in our society. When our leaders act like, you know, angry children or whatever it is, it just gives people who don't see that the go ahead to behave in the same way. So as they say, though you know what runs downhill. And that's kind of, I think, what we're seeing in our society now for sure.
And the fact that we put all of that back into office after we got away for a little bit is just,
Well, yeah, but that's, the thing is that that's more, to me, it's more of a statement of the people than it is. And I understand that it was, for a lot of them, it was probably the lesser of two evils. If you're a conservative, for sure, I see that. And on the other hand, but it's so funny because I was having every time one of the parties gets into good grace, right? Through like George Bush during 9/11. I mean, the whole world was on our side
oh
and
yeah.
they find a way to screw it up,
Yep.
you know? And it's the same thing. The Democrats were doing great and then they got to go all woke and get into pronouns and all this stuff and so they blew it, right? I don't know why people, once they get into power, they go to their extreme. And it's just like that's why the parties bounce back and forth, is because they screw up every opportunity they have to make a good change from their point of view. They go all power nuts. And that's just my opinion. But I've lived long enough. I'm in my 70s now. I've seen that cycle spin so many times. Power corrupts. And when it corrupts,
And
people do crazy stuff.
it totally does. And the weird thing about it is that the definition of a democracy is supposed to keep all of that in check. But you know what?
Exactly.
That's the fear that we have with AI. Like, how did this happen? That's why we're afraid of AI, because we know the human mind. We
I
know,
know.
you know?
Well, plus there's been all these movies to tell us why it's probably not going to be a good idea, right?
Yes.
But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But on the other hand, it's like everything comes with good and bad. That social media itself, it gives a platform for us to have this conversation, and that's another thing. The pandemic definitely fine-tuned Zoom, and I mean, I think that's a big thing. So the upside of social media is it gives smaller voices an audience. But I mean, back in the day, there was probably five old white guys that completely dominated media, and
Yeah.
you got back to William Randolph Hearst in those days, right? So that's the good side of social media. The bad side of social media is the bullying, the
Yep.
trolling, the misinformation, the propaganda that's put out there, and then you got to balance it against free speech,
Yeah.
and that becomes a big problem. So until people really accept that they have an ethical responsibility to society, and I'm talking beyond moral, beyond laws. You have an ethical commitment to creating a better society through your actions. We're not going to be doing too good,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. I totally agree.
And when it comes to the point where we sit there and watch our leaders bald-faced lie and accept that, it's not the lying's bad enough, but the fact that we accept it and move on is kind of telling to what are we doing? We looking at our screens all day and forgetting about that? I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I know. I know. It's perplexing. So, David, let's get into what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, kids always cut through everything. Let's put you in front of a bunch of fifth graders, 12-year-olds. It's career day. Kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
I improve people's lives through physical fitness and recommendations about their metabolic health. And that's what it is. If you want to live to, like I'm still surfing at 74. I talk to people now that are they're in their 50s. I can't get up on the board anymore. It's because you didn't maintain your mobility, you didn't maintain your flexibility, you didn't maintain your strength. So basically what I do is help people to be as strong and healthy as they can be for as long as they can be. And that's about it, I would say.
I dig it. So let me ask you this. What did you want to be when you were 12? What was your dream life?
You know, I wanted adventure. My mom was my parents were voracious readers, and I read a lot of Jack London and tramp steamer stuff. And then they got me into science fiction, which is really that same stuff, just set in space. And I didn't really have a specific, occupation that I wanted to do, I followed the path. I had no choice in being a yoga teacher. It was just, I think there are things in your life that are predetermined, right? But that's kind of like a loosely written script. This is the like it's like Christopher Guest. He does those movies like Best in Show and
Oh
all
yeah,
that.
yeah, I
Well,
love them.
the typical movie is is about 1 page per minute of script. His scripts are like 10 pages long. They walk into the hotel with their dog and they check in, and then the people, his favorite actors, improvise from there, right?
Yeah,
And that's kind of how our lives are. I think we have a karmic script, something that's sort of based on why we're here and why we're in the place we're in, and then we have the ability to, you know, improvise around that depending on where we go. So that was something that I was kind of meant to do. But I sailed around the world when I was 19 to 21. I had to deal with the draft. Uh, I've had my life has been beyond anything that I ever could have imagined when I was 12 years old. And I really think that the reason that that is, and I tell people, is I just said yes. I said,
yeah.
okay. I think people, the regrets that I will never have regrets for the things that I didn't do. I do have regrets for a few of the things that I did, but I think that more people in the end have regrets for the things that they did not do, the things that they turned down and didn't maybe even realize that they were doing it. So, but once started teaching yoga, and I've been teaching yoga for 30 years, I was doing it before it was cool, for it was like people back then, we were into the whole thing of it. It was so far removed from our Judeo-Christian upbringing. There was the meditation and the pranayama and the whole thing. And so that gave me the experience of changing people's lives. You know, I mean, I had people come up to me and say, your class changed my life. And that's what makes me want to, of all the things that I could be doing now at this point in my life, continue to help people. But there's a zillion yoga teachers out there. You shake any tree and 10 of them will fall out. But there aren't a lot of people that are my age that are still doing what I'm doing. So I feel like the proof is in the pudding, and I can help people, navigate aging because it's not an easy journey. And unfortunately, one of the key prerequisites to it is a certain amount of discipline. You mean you don't have to be a saint, but you got to have enough discipline to put that cupcake down, if you have to, or it takes discipline to achieve any type of quality, whether it's playing a musical instrument or whether it's drawing or painting or whether it's creating your body. And so that's the way I look at it.
So I think there was a book that I've been thinking about. You were talking about being a voracious reader and being on a yacht for a year. I was just thinking about a book, and I think it was Persig, Sen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I think his follow-up, he was on a boat for a while. Am I right? Is that
I
correct?
don't remember. I've read up Zen in the art because I rode motorcycles since I was 15 too,
Okay, all right.
but I don't remember him being on a book. But yeah, no, it was a 2 year journey, and I basically hitchhiked. I didn't have somebody say, "Oh, let's go sail around the world." I sailed
Yeah,
from here to New Zealand for a year, got on another boat, sailed to South Africa on that, and worked on a freighter from South Africa back to New Orleans of all things. And that was, I mean, the story that were involved in just that alone. I mean, they back then when I sailed because I sailed into South Africa, and back then you had to have a ticket out of the country and 1,000 rand bond. Rand was their money because they didn't want the hippie travelers coming down there. There's that whole hippie trail that went through Indonesia down into India and all that, and South Africa wasn't going to have that.
yeah.
And when I sailed in there, I didn't have any money, and they were not they were not happy. So I ended up, getting a ride on a freighter out of there. And that's another thing. I think you have to I read a story in Surfer magazine when I was a young kid, and this is old Surfer magazine about it was about traveling because back then it wasn't common to travel to faraway places to look for waves.
Yeah.
And this guy was doing it, and he said you have to throw yourself into the river of life. And I was like 15 when I read that, and I thought, yeah, that's what you got to do. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. And once things work out a couple of times, you have to have faith. Then you have more certainty in the universe to take care of you, right?
Yeah.
That's, I had, even you're in your 60s, right? You're going, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, if you're like you and me, and we're in like probably the top 5% of the planet in terms of good fortune, you just have to trust that it's going to keep going on. And if you have that trust and that belief, it will keep going on. I know you've had the manifestation people
Yeah.
on your podcast
Totally.
before.
And I believe it.
Yeah, oh, that's absolutely true. It's
Yeah.
absolutely true. I've
It's
seen it happen with material things. I've seen it happen. I taught my daughter about that with vision boards and stuff like that. Got into her first choice college, got her role in the play that she wanted. I mean, and people, once it's over, you go, well, was it really just a coincidence? I think a coincidence is once, twice is a sign, and three times it's a freaking truth.
yeah. There was a guy I went to high school with. His name was Christopher Elbow. And I think we ran together. We were in some sport. We were tangentially friends. And I remember at one point, I said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And he said, "I want to be a world-class chef." I was like, well, I didn't even know you cooked. And now he's one of the top chocolatiers in the country. He's got a shop down. He's got like three or four here. They're all over the country. Oprah actually bought his chocolates. He's an
Where are
artiste
you located?
in Kansas City.
Okay, got you.
So he's got artesian chocolates and they're really good, but they're
That's
just
so
like works
cool.
of art. And he did it. And it's like, it's that kind of a thing. But I
But
knew that he had that kind of conviction. I didn't know it was going to go here.
But
But
those people are rare, and they're fortunate that when they're 8, 9, 10 years old, know exactly what they want to do, pursue it, and I mean, that's a gift because a
yeah,
lot of people get out of college and they don't know what they want to do, right?
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, but that's what you see. Like a lot of the professional athletes, a lot of the professional musicians, they knew what they wanted to do when they were young.
yep,
And that's what it takes. You need to start those things when you're young, especially nowadays, to achieve at the way the bar is now for that type of stuff. So man, good for him. That's
yep.
awesome. And I
It is good.
I, I can't imagine a world without chocolate.
Yeah,
That would
right, exactly.
that would not be good.
Not good at all.
I talk to you because I'm into low carb, right? I'm a kind of definitely believe in the ketogenic diet and even carnivore as a therapeutic reset kind of a diet to get all of the bad anything might be bad out for you. But I could never be hardcore carnivore because I
Yeah,
say I need chocolate.
yeah, that's it. I dig it. So let me ask you this. Who's been kind of a hero for you? Who's been an inspirational force for you to do all of this in your life?
Well, my most there's not really anybody else that's even close. It's Paramahansa Yogananda, wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. And I don't know if most people don't know that he was Steve Jobs at his memorial passed out that book wrapped in brown paper, plain brown paper to everybody that came. Um, Yogananda brought yoga to the West, but not yoga in terms of putting your foot behind your head. It was all about meditation. And it's interesting because now neuroscience is showing that that process of meditation puts you into the parasympathetic side of your mind where you're not in your fight or flight, and you can not only do you achieve what you're trying to achieve through your meditation, which for yoga is connection with spirit. That's a lot. Yoga, the word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yug, which means to yoke or unite. And people, they'll say, "Oh, it's breath. We're going to, breath to movement and this and that." But actually, the purpose of yoga was to relieve human suffering. That was what the ancient yogis were trying to do, relieve human suffering. And they found that if you could get rid of all the sense distraction and connect the soul to spirit, and you can call spirit the quantum field, you can call it God, you can call it goddess, you can call it whatever you want, to remove the problems, the confusion of the mind and the body and connect directly to spirit. That was the yoking. That was the connecting that relieved suffering. So Yogananda, that's what Yogananda's form of yoga was about. It's meditation. It's all over the world. They have correspondence meditation lessons that they're very cheap. Like basically the printing and the postage, and so he's my guy. He's the one that I then that I he's the one that I really am into. But anybody who like David Goggins, for instance, anybody that can just that relentless pursuit and have the discipline to do it And it's all the greats, all the greats. It's everybody. I'm sure it's everybody from Miles Davis to LeBron James. To have that one-sided focus on attaining those levels of perfection. I'm into all those guys. I love reading biographies and autobiographies of great people. It's one of my favorite things to read. Not just to try and find that mindset. It's so. It, I just wish more. I wish that's one thing I wish that people would embrace that. It's all about limitations, Joe. People buy into their limitations. There's a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. He's the guy that wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And there's a line in there that I live by: argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. And you see people do, how are you doing? Oh, I'm okay. I got and it's all about the limitation. The more you dwell on those limitations, the more you give them power. The
Yep.
more you dwell on possibilities and manifestation and affirmation, the more that you create that for yourself. It's so simple, and yet people get distracted by the bright, shiny objects and the emotional drama. It takes them off their course, and that's this. I really think and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing at this stage in my life. I think that if you have a mission, I mean a solid mission, it makes everything in your life better
Yep.
because the you got these distractions out there, but they don't affect you the way they do somebody who's idle, right? You've got that focus, you've got that, and it makes dealing with everything else easier because you're not as attached to everything else. You're attached to your end game. And I think that's hugely beneficial to anybody that can do it. I've just seen it too many times and when I've noticed that when I've had a really well focused mission, everything around me is easier to deal with
Yeah.
than if I'm sort of just drifting and going, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I totally get it. There was a
Yeah.
musician that came through Kansas City, um, Matthew Whitaker, and he's blind. He's a prodigy, and he put on this amazing show. And the most amazing thing about him is as wonderful. It was like he was channeling Stevie Wonder. He was that kind of cat. And as amazing as the show was and his musicmanship, he was bright light, man. Like he met everybody after the show. He smiled.
Yeah.
There was this exuberance, and that was the most impressive thing. He had this complete canopy of light and good energy around him that no one would ever penetrate. No one. And
Yeah.
he was just in touch and he knew what he
High
was doing.
vibration.
Yeah, it's
Mm,
right. And
yeah.
there's times being in this position of interviewing those kinds of people like Sonny Rollins and other
Oh,
like
did you interview Sonny?
what
Dude.
it he was amazing. And
Ah,
you get away from it, you're just like it's it, I they him and other of his ilk in the jazz world remind me of all of those Jedis in Cloud City and Empire. They're just
and
up
they're grateful.
they
They're
are
grateful. They're
so
grateful people.
that's the thing. That's the number one thing about Sonny and the humility. His one of his relatives that lives in the Bay Area told me a story about when the towers came down in New York. There was a horn player that was down there on ground zero, just playing, walking around playing. And a reporter went up and said, "Hey, sir, who are you?" And he said, "I'm Sonny Rollins." Sonny
Uh,
Rollins went to ground zero and mobilized himself and just tried to lift the spirits. And this reporter had no idea. But that's not really it. But it's the idea that this guy that is just one of the greatest jazz performers of all time
yeah.
just
No,
felt the humanity.
Sonny is awesome, and I was a jazz saxophone player,
Yeah.
and Sonny he lived in the shadow of Coltrane. That was what happened, right? They were contemporaries. But I
Yeah.
went and saw Sonny and Grover Washington Jr. at the Hollywood Bowl
Wow.
quite a few years back, and I went backstage, and I said hi to Sonny, and but when Grover came in, I had heard a story from a friend of mine, fellow saxophone player, who played up in upstate New York in the summertime at this some sort of I don't know, lodge, or they have, and they had those different music events in the summertime up there, and played with Grover, right? And so I met Grover, and I said, "Hi, how you doing?" I said, "I wanted, my friend," I said, I don't just want to say his name, but Tom said that you guys used to play uh, up in upstate New York at these music things, and Grover turns to his wife and goes, I remember those days like it was yesterday. And it just blew my mind. I mean,
Wow.
this is so many years ago, and it still meant something to him,
Yeah.
and to be reminded of that guy's name, he knew right away what I was talking about.
Yeah.
They're really cool. I love the musicians. I love the musicians. Their art is not dependent on their looks like it is a lot for actors, and it's not dependent on the sound of their voice if they're a musician, playing an instrument. And they just express themselves. The good, great ones just express themselves through those instruments so amazingly. It's unbelievable. It's such a cool thing.
It's a hidden gem in humanity, though. I'll talk to people about how wonderful these human beings are, and they're like, What do you mean?" I'm like, "You have no idea. These people,
Yeah.
they're at a different level, and they're
Yeah.
so grounded." And the thing about I remember when COVID happened, I had to decide what am I going to do, and it was like I got to up my amperage of interviews, and I have my son and stepdaughter, and I'd have all of these interviews on speaker because I was with them. They weren't in school and they just felt the strength and this confidence even in this very perilous time that we were living through. But there are people that I will tell you just have no idea how great these people are, all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's the cat outside of Royal Stadium busking or you get somebody that comes in that's like a legend, it's like they all have this level of like there's this fire that everybody warms their hands on and they want to keep that fire going.
Well, I think that the thing that's interesting about because I mean, I consider myself a musician. I mean, I've been paid to play, and I played in big bands and did that stuff. But I mean, I'm not a professional. I've never, fed my family through music. But I think that the thing that's interesting about music is it's a non-visual art form, and vibration is key to. I mean, even if you talk about that's basically what people talk about the Om in yoga, right? Om is the simplest. I excuse me. When my daughter was young, I said, you know what? If you're going to hang out with me and you do yoga, somebody's going to ask you, what does Om mean, right? And I said, I'm going to give you. She's like 3 or 4 years old. I said, here's the cleanest, basic, most truthful definition you can give of what Om is. Om is the vibration of creation. So you have all these atoms that are buzzing around. You have all these planets that are circling their suns. It's like a big machine.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. It's a vibration. And music is a vibrational art that's not, there's no other art. All the other arts are visual, whether it's painting, sculpturing, movies, film, photography, they're all visual. Music's the only one that's vibrational. It definitely puts it into a different type of realm in terms of the people that do it and the way people receive it. I mean, I think people, even the most jaded person can be moved by music
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, of everything that you've seen and done and all of these different artistic and healing modalities, what are you the proudest of?
Hmm. I'd say creating a community in yoga. I had a Saturday morning class at 8 o'clock that went for 12 years. That was mat to mat every Saturday. And it's at 8 o'clock in the morning. You don't get the people that are using a Groupon. You don't get the looky loos. Nobody's going to get up at that time to come do yoga Saturday morning. And it was a brutal class. It was like sweat puddles on the floor, and people would come literally 48 or 50 Saturdays out of the year. And so that's not. It wasn't the fact that it was a tribe. It was a community, and to have created that was so that was probably that loss came with COVID was the greatest loss, probably one of the greatest losses of my life, not counting my parents dying or anything like that, but just
Yeah.
from that aspect, that was the experience for 12 years. It was I will look back on it at the end of my life as one of the great experiences of my life and one of the great losses. So it wasn't just about teaching yoga to a lot of people. It was about creating that tribe. I would come in there and I would joke that before the class started, it sounded like a tailgate party at a Raider game or something. I mean, they all knew each other. They were so happy to see each other. They were catching up. And that definitely, I would say that was it. Um, but change is the only thing that you can count on, Joe.
Yeah.
And nothing lasts forever.
I dig it.
So You just got to, be grateful for what you had and what it was about, and know that all those people felt the same way. They will all that whole tribe will always remember that, and to have created that bond and that memory in people, that's definitely my greatest personal accomplishment, for sure.
Yeah. No, no, go ahead.
And the thing is, sometimes you don't know what the way that it all started. I was I won't I'd already been doing yoga for a long time, and I knew this girl, and she said, "I'm doing yoga at this place. Why don't you come try it out?" And so it was a Bikram hot yoga class, and I went. And I had already been doing yoga for 15, 20 years, and I went in there, and it was okay. I mean, I liked it all right, and it was $20 for 2 weeks, intro thing. And after about the middle of the second week, the lady who owned the place said, "I need a teacher, and you can do it." Back then, they didn't have these teacher trainings that cost $3,000 or $4,000, so you can go out and say you're a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And I said, okay. I said, I never thought about teaching yoga. And she said, okay, well, I'll pay you this much and you can have all the free classes you want. And I said, okay, I'll try it. And that was how it started. And I never knew what it was going to end up turning into. And I'm, I guess I can do this. I'm going to drop a name right now because this is how it works. I worked on the movie Bridesmaids, and I ran into Kristen just like last year. And I said, "Did you have any idea?" Because that movie, whether you like it or not, changed the girl comedy. I
Yeah.
mean, it was an iconic film. I said, "Did you have any idea what we were making when we made that movie?" And she said, "Oh God, no." And she said in the studio really didn't know. So a lot of times you start doing things and you don't have any idea what it's going to become, right? And when I said yes to her teaching yoga, I had no idea what it was going to become. And 30 years later, here I am still
That's it.
teaching. I still teach once in a while, not too much
Yeah.
nowadays.
So let me ask you this, David. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that works with you, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I just think that I want to channel my purpose. And I would like to think that I channeled my purpose as it came to me, whether it was to experience the world on a sailboat going to remote places that weren't, whether that was it, or whether it was, working in film and television, or whether it was teaching yoga. I just want, I said, okay, I'll give it a go. And it succeeded. On my IG pages, I think my description is uh, jack of all trades, master of a couple. And that's that's how I would define myself.
I love it. So if anyone wants to reach out, they want to learn more, any other good business in your world, where can they go?
Well, they can follow me on IG at Danon Yoga, just if they want that. And my website is David Danon. And I always have to emphasize there's only one N in the middle of my last name. I have been tortured by Danon yogurt
Oh my
for
God, I
my whole
bet.
life. So it's David Danon, DANON.com, and that supports my coaching for people that want to, improve their metabolic health and their physical fitness, and also their mental, because I think all those things that we do, it all starts with the mind.
Yeah.
You know, you're only going to be as successful as the weakest link in your chain of events there, and I have a little PDF that the people get if they when they sign up to be subscribe to the website, and it compares metabolic health and fitness to an automobile, and the driver is the mind. So the engine is the metabolic health, the the car's moving parts are the fitness, and the driver is you, right? The
Yeah.
mind. So yeah, that's the way I kind of look at that.
I dig it. That's cool. Yeah, my last name being Dimino, I get just totally destroyed by Domino's Pizza. I get it all the time. Like I'm a victim of
Oh,
the food world too, so I get it.
uh,
Man,
yeah.
what a great time. I'd love to catch up with you down the road and maybe do a more music centric kind of overview of
Sure.
things. So let's reconvene at some point. But this has been wonderful, man. Thank you. Thank you
Well,
so much
thank
for the story.
thank you, Joe. Thanks for checking me out, and I really appreciate it. Great talking to you. I love talking to people that love music, I love talking to people that are living. I feel like you're living your purpose right now, and that's a
I,
good thing.
yeah, dude. Yeah. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.